Everyone has heard the story of Snow White, right? After being poisoned by a cursed apple, a prince from a distant kingdom riding on the white horse kissed Snow White gently on the lips and wakened her from her deep sleep. From then on, the prince and the princess lived happily ever after. But then what? No one knows. Because stories always ended there. No one ever asked whether Snow White actually wanted to marry a man she had only met once. The wedding was magnificent, like a dream. Snow White smiled and waved to the crowd. She had to smile, after all. That was what princesses in fairy tales were supposed to do. It was not until the night after the wedding, when she was finally alone with the prince, that things became awkward. So, what's your name? Snow White finally asked. What? The prince replied, confused. Your name? Prince. That's a title, not a name. At that moment, Snow White realized something. She knew absolutely nothing about the man she was supposed to spend the rest of her life with. The room fell silent again. Snow White thought maybe she had simply drunk too much at the wedding banquet, too tired to think about it any longer. She soon fell asleep. The next morning, Snow White began to feel that something was wrong. Why are you standing over there? Sitting on the edge of the bed, she stared at the prince standing stiffly in the corner of the room. The prince wore a bright, perfect smile. The sunlight hit his face at exactly the right angle, making him look like he belonged in a toothpaste advertisement. Because princesses always stand like this, he answered promptly. What princess? Princess in fairy tales. Don't you get tired? A little, he admitted, but it's professional etiquette.
Snow White was silent for 3 seconds. So what's your actual name? She asked impatiently. Prince. I mean your real name. Prince? Didn't your parents give you a name? My father usually calls me son. Snow White sighed, realizing she would never get a proper answer from him. She turned to one of the servants nearby. What do you normally call him? The old servant bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, we usually address him as Your Highness. Doesn't he have a name? In formal situation, we call him His Royal Highness the Prince. Snow White was so shocked that she didn't even know what to say anymore. A month passed, and she still didn't know what the prince's name. Finally, she decided to ask the king directly. Father, what exactly the prince's name? The king froze for a moment before falling into deep thought. Please don't tell me you don't know either. Well, everyone has called him Prince since he was little. We need to talk, Snow White said, taking a deep breath before angrily dragging the prince outside the palace. What exactly can you do? She asked. The prince thought for a moment. I can ride a horse through forests. Anything else? I can stand on a cliff and shout, I will save you. Besides saving princesses, the prince fell silent. Am I supposed to do other things too? Snow White was just about to scream when the prince suddenly raised his hand. Wait, what? There's a background music right now. Sure enough, violin music floated through the air in the distance. This is the part where we stare deeply into each other's eyes, the prince said seriously. Who says so? I don't know, he admitted, but the music already started.
Snow White had finally had enough. She climbed onto a horse and rode toward a distant kingdom. Yes, she could ride a horse, or rather, the horse mostly carried her by itself. In a world where birds could help with chores, that really was not strange. Along the road, she came across a group of elegantly dressed ladies chatting together. Curious, she stopped nearby and secretly listened to their conversation. My prince once failed to recognize who I was, Cinderella complained with a roll of her eyes. He found me using a shoe, remember? Yesterday after a banquet, I wore different shoes, and he almost had the guards throw me out. Wow, her prince is weird too, Snow White thought before walking over to join the conversation. My prince doesn't even know his own name, she complained. Even his servants and father don't know it either, everyone sighed. What I really want to know, Sleeping Beauty quietly said while raising her hand, is why everyone thinks it's okay to kiss people while they're asleep. The entire group fell silent. After that strange princess tea party, Snow White returned to the castle. She expected the princess to ride dramatically into the forest searching for her, just like in fairy tales. But he did not. Instead, he simply sat quietly near the entrance. The moment he saw Snow White, he immediately stood up again with his usual perfect posture. What are you doing now? Snow White asked. Waiting for you. Why didn't you ride into the forest looking for me? The prince hesitated. Because you didn't seem like you wanted to be chased, he answered, quietly lowering his head. Snow White froze. For what felt like the first time, the prince was not following the rules of a fairy tale. And, he added softly, I asked my father about my name. And he really didn't know. I see. So I decided to choose one for myself. Snow White could not help laughing. So what name did you choose? I haven't decided yet. What do you think of Charming? Prince Charming? You probably shared that name with a lot of people. That night, there was no romantic background music and no birds gathered near the windows. There were only two people sitting side by side on the balcony, talking all night long. And did they live happily ever after? No one knows, because this time, no one decided their ending for them.